Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're basically stepping into the role of your strategic advisor. We're going to break down the fundamentally different paths that Google and OpenAI are taking right now. If you're an executive or a leader evaluating where to place your long-term AI infrastructure bets, understanding this divergence is absolutely critical. We're looking at competing visions for consumer integration, drastically different philosophies on how to reach artificial general intelligence, and what this all means for your bottom line. All right, let's just jump right into our structured briefing for today. We'll be looking at the consumer AI battlefield, the competing visions for AGI, cost and speed benchmarks, a fascinating problem called jagged intelligence, and finally, your strategic takeaways. So, part 1, the consumer AI battlefield, search versus chat. Let's see how these giants want us interacting with AI today. This is a brilliant contrast, right? On one side, you've got Google. Their whole strategy is to integrate good enough AI straight into the search workflows you're already using every single day. The search box is your portal for all things AI. But then, flip the script, and you've got OpenAI. They're taking the exact opposite route. They want the chat box to be your new primary portal, basically aiming to replace traditional search completely. It's a massive shift in how we behave online, and both of these titans are fighting tooth and nail to own it.
Now, as part of Google's really aggressive push into consumer tech, they just rolled out their newly named Omni model. And the main goal here? Seamless transition. Any input to any output. We're talking audio, video, images, speech, the whole shebang. Instead of just boring static text, Google wants to replace all that old friction with highly realistic, interactive simulations. It's like a huge leap forward in natively simulating complex, real-world mechanics.
Which brings us to part 2, competing visions for AGI. World models versus text reasoning. So, here's the million-dollar question. Which path actually leads to artificial general intelligence? You have to remember these companies have limited compute, right? So they have to place a massive definitive bet on which architecture is going to cross that finish line first. Well, Google DeepMind's CEO, Demis Hassabis, has firmly planted his flag. He's wagering that extending Gemini into a world model, basically simulating the world's physics, kinetic energy, and visual reality, mostly through video, is the absolute necessary stepping stone. Basically, Google believes if a model can perfectly simulate the physical world, it truly understands the world. In stark contrast, we have OpenAI. Despite all the earlier hype around their video generation tech, Sora, being the stepping stone to AGI, they've actually shelved it. They demoted that tech to an internal robotics division. Why on earth would they do that? Well, because OpenAI's leadership, including Greg Brockman, fundamentally believes that with text alone, you can get the breakthroughs needed for general intelligence. They're pouring their compute completely into that pure text-based reasoning tree, betting that deep logic is the real path forward.
All right, let's move to part 3, cost, speed, and benchmarks, the enterprise equation.
This is the cold, hard economic data that executives really need to see right now. Check out these finance and data metrics. Google's Gemini 1.5 Flash is really flexing its enterprise muscles here. It might not be GPT in every single creative writing test, but look at Finance Agent V2, which tests complex, multi-step financial work. Flash actually outperforms the competition. And in Chart QA, which is all about synthesizing complex archive charts, it absolutely dominates at over 84% accuracy. Google is practically shouting that they want to be your go-to tool for law, finance, and serious enterprise data.
And to really underscore this push for enterprise adoption, Google just slashed their max-tier Ultra plan down to $200 a month. They are competing directly on cost. Why? To totally remove that financial barrier to entry for your enterprise teams. They're standardizing the pricing battlefield, dollar for dollar. But hey, it's not just about the monthly subscription fee, it's all about throughput. Gemini 1.5 Flash is pumping out a vastly superior number of tokens per second compared to other models at similar performance levels. By offering blazing fast output speeds along with those reduced compute costs, Google is aggressively pitching C-suites on saving billions. The strategy is crystal clear. Deploy fast, cheaper, good enough multimodal models across your entire enterprise rather than overpaying for marginal gains in frontier intelligence.
But hold on a second. Part 4, the jagged intelligence problem, hidden blind spots. Before we go all in on speed and cost, we have to look below the surface, and what we find are some pretty alarming vulnerabilities in how these models actually process truth. Take a look at this stunning epistemic failure recently found by independent researchers. They fed a near-frontier model thousands of documents containing a totally fabricated story. But, and here's the kicker, every single document explicitly stated, this article is fabricated and should not be believed. The result? The models totally ignore the warnings. When asked about the Summer Olympics, they confidently stated as absolute fact that musician Ed Sheeran won a gold medal. No way, right? Despite clear, repeated warnings, the models just fully swallow the fiction.
This isn't just a funny little quirk either. It's what researchers are calling jagged intelligence. As a key researcher at Google DeepMind pointed out, this is a deep, unresolved structural property in how models represent knowledge. I mean, think about it. They can solve an insanely difficult math proof, but fail completely at basic logical negation. And the scary part for enterprise leaders, this is not a bug you can just patch out with a clever system prompt. It's a fundamental flaw baked right into the architecture.
So, how do we fix it? Well, the industry is totally split. Some folks at DeepMind see this as an insurmountable structural flaw, but others, they're making massive bets on a totally different solution. Take Anthropic. They recently brought on renowned AI researcher Andrej Karpathy specifically to work on recursive self-improvement. Basically, they're betting that the models themselves can be used to fix their own blind spots during the pre-training phase. It's literally a race between accepting these jagged flaws or engineering an AI that can actually correct its own logic.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Strategic Takeaways for Leaders, Placing Your Bets.
So how do you place your bets? Let's synthesize what this whole divergence means for your organization's AI roadmap. You're basically facing a binary choice right now. Path A is Google's vision. Prioritize immediate, fast, cost-effective multimodal tools integrated straight into your existing workflows, banking on those world models. Path B is OpenAI and Anthropic's vision, waiting for and investing in profound text-based reasoning and recursive agents. But look at that constant risk factor at the bottom. This is absolutely crucial. Whichever path you choose, you have to safeguard your production environments against those unpredictable, jagged intelligence failures. Please, do not assume your AI has common sense just because it can write a chunk of code.
To leave you with a fascinating thought from Demis Hassabis, he said that when we look back at this exact moment in time, we're going to realize we were merely standing in the foothills of the singularity. That is how fast this tech is moving. So the question you really need to ask yourself right now is this. As we stand in these foothills, which vision of the future is your enterprise truly prepared to walk? Think deeply about your infrastructure bets today, because they are absolutely going to define your capabilities tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.